The courtroom smelled faintly of old paper and arrogance. Rows of strangers whispered behind their masks of curiosity as Marcia Lane, a 34-year-old single mother, clutched a folder of documents against her chest. She'd been up all night ironing her only formal blouse, rehearsing every line she'd say. This was her final plea to keep custody of her 8-year-old son, Eli. Across the aisle sat her ex-husband, Daniel Lane, a man in an expensive Navy suit whose charm could melt through any argument except truth. He had one of the city's best lawyers. She had herself. When the bailiff announced, "All rise," Marcia's hands trembled. Judge Ronald Pierce entered, tall, gray-haired, with a stare that had reduced defendants to dust. His robe rustled as he "Saturday, let's proceed," he said, adjusting his glasses. Case number 2247, Lane versus Lane. Custody hearing. Daniel's lawyer stood immediately. "Your Honor, my client is seeking full custody on the grounds of instability and lack of financial capacity by the mother." Marcia rose quickly. "That's not true, Your Honor. I've kept every payment, every school record." The judge raised a hand. "Ms. Lane, you'll have your turn." She sat down. Her throat burned. Daniel's lawyer began listing every weakness he could find. Her late rent payments, her part-time job, the small apartment she just barely secured. When Marcia's turn finally came, she stood with a deep breath. "Your Honor, I may not have a big apartment or a car, but I have stability. I work 2 jobs. I've never missed a single parent-teacher meeting, and my son is thriving." The judge interrupted, eyes narrowing. "Ms. Lane, this court is not impressed by speeches. Facts only." Her voice faltered. I have his school reports here. Straight A's, perfect attendance." Judge Pierce sighed loudly. "You people always think emotion replaces evidence." "You people," she repeated quietly. "Single parents," he said coldly, always blaming the system. "Maybe if you spent less time dramatizing and more time working, you'd be in a better situation." The courtroom went silent. Marcia's lips trembled, but she forced herself to speak. "With all due respect, I am working, sir. 2 jobs. I'm trying to." "Trying isn't doing, Ms. Lane," the judge said. "And frankly, your behavior here shows poor judgment, bringing a child into this world without a stable foundation." "That's not fair," she whispered. "You don't even know me." "I know your file," he said curtly, "and I know irresponsibility when I see it. The decision came down fast, too fast. Temporary custody to the father, pending full review." Her breath caught. "Wait, what?" "You can reappeal after demonstrating a more suitable environment," he said, already signing the paper. She felt her knees weaken. Daniel smirked across the aisle, his lawyer whispering something smug. Marcia's voice cracked. "You're taking my son based on judgment, not evidence." "Order," Judge Pierce barked. "One more outburst, and I'll hold you in contempt." She froze. Tears blurred her vision. Court adjourned. The gavel fell, hard and final. That night, Marcia sat in Eli's empty bedroom, the faint smell of his shampoo still clinging to the pillow. She pressed her face into it and whispered, "I'll get you back, baby. I promise." Bills and rejection letters covered her kitchen table. The judge's words replayed in her head like poison. "You people, irresponsibility, not impressed by speeches." But the thing about single mothers, they don't stay down long. Marcia gathered her notes, every receipt, every pay stub, every report card, and began building her appeal. She contacted a pro bono legal advocacy group that helped women in unfair family court rulings. When they read her case file, they frowned. "This judge is a pattern," said attorney Nia Brooks, a sharp young lawyer who'd seen bias too many times. "You're not his first victim." "What do you mean?" Marcia asked. "Pierce has a reputation. He lectures women, especially single mothers, like they're students. We've been tracking complaints for months." Marcia's eyes widened. "So it's not just me?" "No," Nia said grimly, "but you might be the one who changes it." Weeks turned into months of paperwork and interviews. Daniel refused to cooperate. He blocked calls, sent snide texts. You should thank me for giving Eli a real home. Marcia ignored him. Her focus was on the appeal. Every night, she studied law videos online, learning the structure of legal motions. Every morning, she left early for her shifts. First at the diner, then at the library where she cleaned offices after hours. The exhaustion was brutal, but so was her determination. By the time the appeal date came, she wasn't trembling anymore. She was ready. The New York State Court of Appeals was grander than the first. High ceilings, marble floors, and more reporters than usual. Apparently, someone had leaked that a lower court judge's conduct was under review. Marcia sat beside Nia, dressed in the same white blouse she'd worn before, but this time her posture was straight, her voice steady. When Judge Pierce entered, he looked surprised to see cameras. He had been called in for a questioning regarding professional conduct and impartiality. The appeal panel of 3 senior judges took their seats. Judge Marianne Holt, the presiding justice, spoke first. Judge Pierce, this hearing concerns potential bias and unprofessional behavior during the Lane custody case. You may begin by explaining your rationale. Pierce adjusted his robe. My decision was based solely on evidence. The mother demonstrated instability. Instability? Judge Holt interrupted. Your comments on record include, quote, "You people always blame the system. Could you clarify who you meant by you people?" Pierce hesitated. That was a general statement. A general statement about what? Single mothers? Women? The courtroom murmured. Cameras clicked. Pierce cleared his throat. It was not intended as bias. It was frustration with repeated courtroom behavior. Judge Holt's gaze hardened. You also told Ms. Lane, trying isn't doing. Did you review her employment records before saying that? No, he admitted, but her presentation suggested. Suggested? Holt cut in. Judges don't rule on suggestions, sir. We rule on facts. A hush spread across the chamber. Marcia watched quietly, hands clasped in her lap. Then it was her turn. Nia stood. Your honors. I present documented evidence of Ms. Lane's employment history, stable income, and consistent parental involvement. We also submit statements from Eli's teachers confirming her reliability and care. Judge Holt reviewed the documents. This evidence was in the original submission? Yes, Nia replied. It was in the file Judge Pierce dismissed as emotional appeals. The panel conferred briefly, flipping pages. Then Holt looked up. Judge Pierce, did you read this file in full before your ruling? Pierce shifted. I skimmed key sections. You skimmed a child's future, Holt said sharply. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. It was over before he even realized it. After 15 minutes of deliberation, Judge Holt returned with the decision. The appellate court finds that the lower court ruling demonstrated partiality and lacked evidentiary consideration. The custody decision is hereby reversed. Full custody is reinstated to Ms. Marcia Lane. Marcia covered her mouth, tears spilling silently. Holt wasn't done. Furthermore, she continued, this court formally reprimands Judge Ronald Pierce for conduct unbecoming of judicial neutrality. His comments toward the plaintiff were inappropriate, unprofessional, and undermined the dignity of this bench. Reporters' pens flew across notepads. Pierce stood rigid, his face pale. Effective immediately, Holt concluded. Judge Pierce will be suspended pending full review by the Judicial Conduct Board. Silence, then murmurs, then applause. Soft at first, then rising as people realized what just happened. A system that usually silenced people like Marcia had finally spoken for her. Outside the courthouse, cameras swarmed. Reporters shouted questions. Ms. Lane, how do you feel? Do you think justice was served? Marcia smiled through tears. Justice isn't just about winning. It's about being heard. Later, she drove Eli's school. He was waiting outside with his backpack, scanning the crowd. When he saw her car, his face lit up. Mom! He ran to her, arms outstretched. She knelt and hugged him tight, whispering, I told you I'd bring you home. He grinned. Did you win? She smiled. No, baby. We won. A month later, a news story went viral. Judge who lectured single mom faces suspension. Woman's courage sparks reform. In the comments section, thousands of single parents shared similar stories. Some even called Marcia a hero, but she didn't see herself that way. She was just a mother who refused to be silenced. One crisp evening, Judge Holt invited her to speak at a judicial ethics seminar. Standing before a crowd of law students, Marcia said softly, "Fairness isn't complicated. You don't need a robe or a gavel to practice it. You just have to remember that every person who stands before you has already fought battles you'll never see." When she finished, the room stood in applause. From the back, Nia smiled proudly. Never mistake humility for weakness. When power mocks the powerless, the truth eventually calls everyone to stand. He thought his robe made him untouchable until justice made him take it off.